Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Pod Save Chocolate. My name is Clay Gordon. I'm your host, and today's topic is trendy trends, trending, and how to take advantage of them. How can you make money in 2026 as a chocolate maker, as a confectioner, in 2026 to grow your business? And with all the craziness that's going on right now, finding ways to make money is increasingly important. Now, at this point in every episode, I would say, hey, this is episode is sponsored by the members of the Chocolate Life, and I'd show you the homepage of the Chocolate Life. But for some reason, right now, the data center where my server is hosted is unreachable. And maybe the data center, it may be the server cluster. It's been unreachable for about 12 hours, and which is not a good thing. So I can't show you, unfortunately, what's going on right now at the Chocolate Life. But what I can say is if you are a member of the Chocolate Life, your membership supports everything that I do here at Pod Save Chocolate. And I do encourage you to go and visit the Chocolate Life. Hopefully, it'll be up in the very near future, and you'll be able to see everything that's going on. And in the meantime, no matter where you are checking in today, no matter where you're watching this episode, you can go into the live comments at YouTube. You can go into the comments at LinkedIn and Facebook, and you can let me know where in the world you are connecting from. I'll get that up on screen. And otherwise, you can ask a question or comment on what it is that I'm doing today. So that would be really, really cool. I'll get the question up on screen, the comment up on screen, and I'll respond to it as I can. What I can't do, however, is say, oh, the Chocolate Life podcast series, Pod Save Chocolate, is available on YouTube. I just went to YouTube and searched for Pod Save Chocolate. This is the channel. If you're not a subscriber, right, you can go and subscribe to the channel, support, like, share, do all the things that you can do on YouTube. And here is the link for today's episode. Now, as I say, the server is down and you can't actually visit it right now, but you can go and follow the Chocolate Life and Pod Save Chocolate on YouTube. You can also follow it on LinkedIn. So here is the page on LinkedIn, and you can see me over there. It's going to be an infinite recursion for what's going on. But this is live on YouTube at the moment, or on LinkedIn at the moment. And if you don't follow me on LinkedIn, you can follow me on LinkedIn. And if you'd like to connect on LinkedIn, you can follow and connect on LinkedIn. If you're on Facebook, here is the page for the Chocolate Life on Facebook, and you can watch this episode at least for the next 30 days on Facebook on Trending. And here is where I can be found on Instagram. So I'm doing this just because I can't show you the homepage of the Chocolate Life at the moment. But this is where you can find and follow and what it is that I'm doing. So with all that being said and done, let us go out and talk about the topic of today's episode, which is trendy trends, trending. Now, the concept of trends, what is the industry saying? What is showing up on Reddit? What is showing up on social media, TikTok, and other places is a topic that I've talked about before. But I haven't really done, well, it's not that I haven't really done, I haven't done a deep dive on specific trends and what you can do to be able to take advantage of them in your business. And so what I'm showing you here right now is a Google Doc. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be converting this Google Doc into an ebook format, and I'm going to be publishing it on the 15th of February. And if you are a member of the Chocolate Life at any premium level, you will receive a copy of this book at no additional charge. I'll just send it to you on the 15th of the month. If you are just a member level, which is $42 a year, you have to be an annual member, you'll get this one. If you are an annual member at anything above that, the leader, champion, or guru level, you will receive every single one of these ebooks. And I plan to do one per month, which is going to be based on a topic that I cover, right, as a part of the Pod Save Chocolate series. This is just the first one. And what I've been doing in the last 12 hours since the site was unreachable was work on the document that I'm going to be sending to people Oh, I'm back. Hey, everybody, I'm back. I have no idea why I got lost, but I am back. And so, anyway, so while I was gone, I was talking about, or as I was, for some reason, the stream got interrupted. Um, here's what's going on. And I don't know what the technical glitches are. When I was trying to do last week my interview with Jorge Redmond of Chocolate El Rey, we had technical problems. I'm still trying to do that. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to go and introduce this. So if you are a member of the Chocolate Life, at any annual premium subscription, you will receive this book at no additional charge as a benefit of membership. At the leader, champion, and guru levels, I'm going to be doing these once a month, and you will receive these for as long as you maintain your membership. So it's going to be a new ebook series that I'm putting together that's going to take what it is that I've learned and current topics and distill them into a book format that you can use in your business around marketing and new product development and all those sorts of things, just marketing communications as well. And what we're going to do is we're going to start off and we're going to say, okay, what are 10, I actually increase this to 11 trends. What are 11 trendy trends trending that you as a chocolate maker or confectioner should probably be aware of if you're not already, right? And let's go and talk about what those 11 viral chocolate trends for 2026 are. Now, there are 10 of them I'm going to recommend, and one of them I'm going to say you might want to let this one pass by, right? But the 10 viral chocolate trends we're gonna talk about, the 11 we're going to talk about, is number one is Dubai style chocolate and what's called angel hair style chocolate. They're sort of lumped together. And the original Dubai style chocolate, I'm going to put a link to my podcast episode on Dubai chocolate where I talk extensively about what this is. So you're seeing a work in progress. This is not the final version of this if you're following along, right? Is that it originated in Dubai. It originated in a store called Fixed Desserts, and it includes a pistachio and tahini cream filling, pistachio paste and tahini cream filling with a crunchy element, which was a type of phyllo dough. And it was a thick bar, and you opened it up and it was green inside, and it had this just really luxurious mouthfeel from the pistachio paste and tahini, coupled with the crunchiness of the phyllo dough. And it ticked a lot of boxes. It was unusual. It had a cultural element. And it had what's called limited availability. You had to go to the store. They only made so many per day. And if you arrived late, you wouldn't be able to get it. Somebody on TikTok talked about it and it blew up and went crazy. And this was 4 years ago now, 5 years ago now. And what we do is we find some of the biggest brands in the world um, going and doing a Dubai inspired chocolate bar. So this is a trendy trending. And we'll talk about how to take advantage of this in your business. Excuse me. What we're going to do is we're going to talk about what the trends are first in details. Again, I'm going to be expanding upon these descriptions before I release the book. The second trend that we want to look at is what are called multi-sensory experience bars, right? Where you combine some texture or flavor with a nostalgic element and a story that is associated with it. And it is that layering of elements, the texture, flavor, nostalgia, and story, which might be literally, right, reflected in layering in the product that it is that you're making. So you've got limited time drops designed for FOMO, fear of missing out, products that people line up for and share, chocolate that is framed as a moment rather than a commodity. So that's another trend about it. So I've got to go and change this. Great thing about working with the document in real time, what are called high drama fillings, right? So it turns out that if you go and look through search histories, so you can go and search for a term on Google and find out the trend of this term, right? So search demand for chocolate bar fillings is spiking, right? Particularly probably driven by Dubai chocolate. But what are some other things that you might do in terms of high drama fillings? And so the idea is maybe you might do something around cheesecake or a tres leches cake. Consumers want thick shells hiding runny, creamy, or crunchy centers that create a reveal shot on video. The clearest texture trends heading into 2026 or for the rest of 2026. From there, we're going to go with plant-based and milk chocolate as mainstream indulgence. This is, obviously people who are looking for vegan products, people are looking for products that might be, lower impact in a sustainability, environmental sustainability perspective. Somebody who's got some sort of dietary restriction they're looking for. But the question is, and this is what we'll get to in the next section, which is called co-optation strategies, right? How do you and your business, how do you think about taking advantage of that in a very, very considered way? And we'll get to that next stage. All right. So a third one, another one of the trends is better for you. Oh man, got to do work on my editing here. Better for you, dark chocolate, right? Focusing on scientific stuff. So flavonols, theobromine, and anti-aging or aging slower, which is, I did mention this article on the anti-aging benefits of theobromine, right? And is a way of, which turns out to be a fact which has been established through at least one peer review study. So, well, is it a fact that has been established? There is a peer review study which suggests that theobromine has an anti-aging effect. And so you might consider consuming chocolate, not just for its heart health benefits and other benefits, but you might consume it for anti-aging benefits. And this is something that we're seeing in a lot of places where companies are looking to go take advantage of this aspect of chocolate, specifically around theobromine, as a part of a better for you kind of environment. So better for the planet. Right? This is something we've been talking about. Is it more on people's minds because of the increase in the price of cocoa over the last year? The answer is yes. The awareness around the impact of climate change, all the controversy around the EUDR, people are more aware of what sustainability claims need to be done, what sustainability efforts need to be done in order to safeguard cocoa for the future. Again, the question becomes, how do you go and take these ideas of better for the planet and incorporate them into your product? And we're going to talk about that. So we've got the name that trend section, and then we have the co-optation section. So provenance-driven storytelling. If you're a single origin craft/specialty chocolate maker, provenance is really important. I am making a single origin chocolate. The beans come from this country, the beans come from this farm, the bean comes from this farmer. And it turns out that, provenance is related to this better for the planet, traceable, ethical stuff. But it is leaning into knowing where your ingredients come from that is important here. Again, how do you take advantage of this trend? How do you take advantage of this trend in your business for the rest of 2026? Sugar-free, reduced sugar indulgence. This is part of the healthier for you, better for you aspect, but it's singled out here as a way to be able to focus people's attention on it, because sugar-free as a better for you story, this reduced sugar-free, reduced sugar indulgence is different from better for you focusing on science, which is flavonols, theobromine, aging slower, things like that, right? And another trend to think about is sweet and salty, okay, which the industry has decided to call swalty, right? Sweet and tangy, which the industry calls swangy, and sweet and spicy, which is being called swicy. So you have this swa, and I haven't come up with an overall term for what swa means. So you have swicy flavor and texture mashups, right? So, and how do you go and implement these things into products for the rest of the product year, or the rest of the calendar year, and taking a look at the end of 2026 for 2027 and see if there are new trends that you can take advantage of. And so this is something I'm going to be doing for next year. So at the end of 2026, I'm going to be taking a look at trends for 2027, right? And I'm going to be updating this. Again, if you're an annual member above a certain level at the Team TCL Leader, Champion, or Guru level, you will receive this update next year at no additional charge, just for being a member. Now, there is a viral trend, a viral chocolate trend for 2026 that I think is one that you, if you are a small chocolate maker or you are a small confectioner, it's one you should probably overlook. It's one you should choose not to follow. And this is to replace chocolate which is made with real cocoa. In other words, real chocolate, which is made from cocoa beans, which from trees grown in the ground, right? With some sort of alternative cocoa, whether that cocoa is cell cultured, whether that cocoa is using precision fermentation or some other lab manufactured technique. There's you may want to if you are a specialty and craft chocolate maker, abandoning real chocolate for alt dot chocolate adjacent something, right? This is probably something that you want to, a trend that you want to avoid. And what I'm going to be doing between now and the time I release it is language that you might want to use when people come up and ask you about an alt chocolate or a cocoa alternative. So I'm gonna go and talk about that. I'm going to go include some information in that in the next ebook, right? So having done that, right, and so these are all in chapters in the Google Doc, right? So let's look at some co-optation strategies. And so what I have done is for each of the trends, I put together a presentation rubric, and we'll go through that for not the first one, but the second one, because I added one as I think is the most important one. But what I have done is on this cover page, you have a glossary. So for example, I use the term LTO, limited time offer. I also use the term microline, and I define what microline is. So a microline is 3 or fewer SKUs, and a mini line is up to 5 SKUs, so 4 or 5 SKUs, right? So, if you're a small chocolate maker or a small confectioner, it's easy if you're making bonbon to have 30, 40, 50, 100 SKUs, right? Individual products that you're making. But if you're focusing on making chocolate from cocoa beans, having a lot of products, a lot of SKUs is a little more difficult. So I wanted to talk about a mini line and a micro line in a very, very specific way. All right. And then for each topic I'm going to introduce, I have a box here in which I introduce notes, which are my thoughts, my overview on something. So when we think about the idea of co-optation strategies, right, the exhortation is adapt the following ideas to translate each trend into unique, actionable, that's the important, actionable product and content angles that make sense for your business. So notes, number one, 20% of your product line should generate 80% of your revenues and profits. Very, very simple, right? I'm going to add another one in here. I'm going to make a note down here for myself. I don't want to put it down there, right? I'm just going to insert it in here for the time being. You want to create, I'll update the table, products that people will want to buy regularly. So the idea being here that, if you're promoting your product is, oh, it's so good, you don't need to eat very much, you'll be satisfied with it, that's counterintuitive. That goes against. So what you want to do is you want to create products that are moreish. Somebody's going to buy it, they're going to eat the entire thing, they're going to like it so much they're going to go back and buy it again. You want to have those products. You want to deliberately create those products of what you're doing. And so the research on the trend is one thing, and my notes about the trend are another. And these will be included in the book that you get on the 15th of February, again, at no extra charge if you are a member of the Chocolate Life, an annual premium member of the Chocolate Life. The annual premium member is $42 a year. And these books are going to have a cover price of $14.95 each. right? And so the goal, $14.95, and you'll have lots of ideas that you can apply to your business. So it'll be a real cool thing. As a way of saying thank you for becoming a member of the Chocolate Life. So number one trending, and this is not just a trendy trend trending for 2026. It is the Uber trend that we have seen for well over a decade, and that is the trend that beats all other trends. You know what? I'm going to change the name of that. The trend to beat all other trends, which is salted butter caramel. The idea being here is this is the number one flavor that people keep returning to: salted butter caramel something. If you do not have a product somewhere that you're selling that does not include salted butter caramel, you are leaving money on the table. You've got customers who want the flavor and you're not providing it to them, so they're going somewhere else. You need to provide something associated with salted butter caramel. So we have the product angle that you can see here. So here's the name of the trend. So there's a product angle, and then there's a content angle. And the content angle requires in your marketing, you're doing in your social media. So whether you're doing a TikTok video, a photo for Instagram, an Instagram reel, something like that. The content angle is, oh, here's an idea, right, that you want to focus on. So when you're doing the content angle for salted butter caramel, lean into the notion of familiarity, popularity, and nostalgia all at once. Now, keep in mind that this salted butter caramel element could be a part of a product which is for one of the other trends that we're going to be covering. So I wanted to talk about it independently, but keep in mind that it could be incorporated into one of the other trends. So this is the one that I added this morning. If you do not have salted butter caramel something, you're leaving money on the table. Do something with salted butter caramel. At this point, with the cost of cocoa and other things like that, there are good sources for salted butter caramel that you can purchase. You do not necessarily need to make the salted butter caramel that you're using. You can purchase it, clean ingredients, good provenance, all the things that we're talking about, right? Don't necessarily sweat the fact that you don't have a caramel cooker and you don't have any experience with caramels and you're not really confident in your ability to do this. Fine. Go and find a good source for salted butter caramel from a good supplier that you can trust, right? Sugar, cream, right? Butter, that's it. You don't need anything else. Maybe some corn syrup or some inverted syrup to keep it from crystallizing over time. But you can find it in any viscosity. You can find something that can be slabbed and cut. You can find something that you can pour, depending upon the ingredient, depending on the product that you're making. But hands down, salted butter caramel. I remember one of the first times I ran into this. It was a bar made by Alma Chocolate, so Sarah Hart, and it was for the Next Generation Chocolatier competition. And what Sarah had done is she had done a salted butter caramel to hard crack and then let it set into very, very thin layers. She put it out on a sheet pan to cool. And then she broke that up, right, and into pieces and used them in an inclusion on the back of the bar. So you'd go through this milk chocolate. Sarah wasn't making the milk chocolate. I don't know whose chocolate she was using. I don't recall. But you have this really, really crispy, salty, crunchy element on the back of a bar. You need to be careful because that's going to be fairly hygroscopic, so which means it will absorb moisture for the environment, and you need to be careful about how you package it. But I think it was the first time I said, "Oh my gosh, salted butter caramel." I think the first time I really paid attention to it, and this would have been in 2005, 2006, something around that time frame. So, right, it's a trend that's been around at this point, for 15, 20 years. Right. So I mentioned that Dubai style and angel hair nut cream bars. Right. So the product angle is do an ultra premium provenance driven take on the original bars, not straight copies. So this is important. So thin, well tempered shells, one, maximum two signature filling layers rather than chaotic stacks. Emphasize the provenance of the ingredients. So if you are doing pistachios, you can talk about Bronte pistachio. You can talk Sicilian pistachio. If you're doing a hazelnut, you can do Piemonte DOP. You could lead into Oregon filberts, which is what they've been calling them in Oregon. Lean into the provenance of the ingredients with clearly labeled origins, right? Run limited run LTO. Again, this notion of artificial scarcity. I'm going to make 100 of them. When they're gone, and I'm not going to do them again for another year or something like that. Limited availability. So Dubai style bars that are tied to specific holidays. So you might do if St. Patrick's Day is green, what you could do is a white chocolate bar, which is colored green with a green, pistachio filling. It is tied to St. Patty's Day. Or you could do something for the 4th of July, which has got a different color scheme. Or you could do something for Halloween, which might be orange inside with a dark chocolate. You get the idea, I hope, right? But you can take the notion of this bar and reinterpret it. You don't have to use pistachios, right? I'm here in Arizona, and I'll mention this later. We have pine nuts grow in Arizona. You can use Oregon hazelnuts if you'd like to do that rather than Piemonte hazelnuts. In the United States, we have a native nut, the pecan, which is not used very often. I mean, it is a wonderful nut, right? At the moment, it might be less expensive than the pistachios, which is not always the case, right? But I can tell you, I believe that pecan is an underutilized nut. And so doing an inspired version of something like a Dubai bar based in pecans, maybe reminiscent of something like a pecan pie, for example, could be a really, really interesting idea. And we'll talk about, I'll bring that up again, right? So here's the product angle, and I'm not going to go through all of them, right? But then there is a content angle. So what you want to do is position yourself as specialty craft chocolate's answer to the trend. And why is that important? Because big industrial companies, right, are getting into the Dubai chocolate, labeling it big chocolate. And I have tried several of them. The one thing I will tell you, and this is something that I've mentioned in these notes, is that the Lindt version of this is spectacularly bad, right? Because they don't understand what the appeal of the product is, right? The appeal of the product is that it is thick, and when you cut it apart, or there's maybe a kind of cheese pull associated with the filling, but when you cut it apart and when you bite into it, you have this lengthy experience of biting through it and chewing, and the way the center sort of maybe sometimes splooshes into your mouth, right? And the Lindt bar is like maybe 3 millimeters thick, 4 millimeters thick. There's more chocolate than filling, and the pistachio flavor and texture don't really come through. So yes, Lindt does a Dubai inspired bar, but their interpretation of it misunderstands what the real appeal of the product is from Fixed Desserts, the original product. And so if you're going to do these bars, make sure that the ratio of filling to chocolate is appropriate, so that when you do the cut cross section, right, it is obvious. If you're going to break it, it is obvious what's going on. So when people bite into it, they have this experience. And so it's really important. So the note I have on this one, and again, I'll be making notes for everybody, for every one of these, is these bars are about the mouthfeel and textural contrast. The only way to achieve it is to make the filling thick. So if you've got a 10 millimeter bar, you might do 6 to 8 millimeters of filling. So 10 millimeters, 3 millimeters, about 1/8 of an inch. So 3/8 of an inch, a little over 3/8 of an inch. You want to make sure that the filling is thick, right? What you do need to consider is that the chocolate shell needs to be adequate. It needs to provide adequate structural support for the filling. But think about that. What is the bar about? It's not about it being from Dubai. It is about the semi-exotic nature of the ingredient. We'll do that. But it is really all about the experience of biting through it. It is the mouthfeel and the contrast of the texture between the chocolate, the nut paste filling, the pistachio and tahini filling, and the crunchy element which is in it. So consider that, right? So when you do this, again, I've been consulting in the chocolate field to makers since 2001, And part of what it is that I want to do is transfer some of that experience um, into this book so that you can take advantage of as a member of the Chocolate Life. So the next trend is multi-sensory experience bars. And this is an extension on the the Dubai bar. Uh, so think about one flagship SKU, one flagship product whose brief is make it photogenic, make it texturally interesting, and make it technically serious. So a layered tablet or slab, an inclusion layer, maybe a contrasting layer. It says fruit leather. So I'm going to say fruit jelly. That's probably a better way to describe this. Caramelizedness, perhaps meringue shards. Treat it like a dessert course in bar form. Limited SKU and availability, and refined. So um, this is okay. The Dubai bar specifically is around nut paste and phyllo shards, and the multi-sensory experience bars is let's go and take that concept and let's break the mold, pun intended, and let's take that concept and see if it can be reimagined. And the whole idea about how you go about um, promoting it is that you have tasting scripts. So if when you're doing your social media, what you do is you talk to customers about the snap, the smell, the melt, the crunch. Um, Typo here. Explainers about how you constructed. Why did you go and choose these elements in this order? Keep in mind that the order in which you have something in a stack is important to the consideration. So think about if you've got a layered something and you think about eating it one way, turn it upside down and eat it the other way, and see if the taste experience is different. You want to talk about that in essential language. So this explainer is about how you constructed the experience is a content angle that you can exploit right without the negative context of what people might think of as exploitation, something you lean into and that you can work with. And then you can have that behind the scenes content on prototype failures. So, this is version 11. I tried 10 others and they didn't work, and this is why. Right? So these kinds of things are going to give your customers an insight into your creative process. Don't always focus on the successes. Talking about what led to how you got to where you are is an interesting way to position yourself as a conscientious creator, a designer with intent, an artistic expression. Right, that is something that you try, you don't like, you iterate on. It's better, you iterate along. You don't like that, and you iterate again. Right, but this multi-sensory experience bar again is taking the idea that inspired the Dubai bar, right, and moving it into a different set of ingredients, right? Not nut pastes, for example. What else can I do and put it inside of it? The next trend was high drama fillings. So in this particular case, it says tres leches cake, pistachio cake, or cheesecake. I was going to say pistachio something, right? Do that. So use fill formats. So use a filled format, again, like a Dubai style bar, but perhaps using layered ganaches, right? Which would be, or a ganache with a gianduja or a nut paste, which is slabbable and cuttable, right? So, but think about the flavors. So a ganache based cheesecake and tres leches, for example, these are two things, but you might do multi-layered. And then a micro collection, 3 or fewer dessert bars or bonbons. And this is something that Arcelia Gallardo at Mission Chocolate has done really well. The Mission Chocolate from Brazil has done really well. There is a Portuguese or a Brazilian dessert called Romeo and Juliet, and which is I'm not gonna talk about it because I don't remember specifically what the elements of this bar are. But she has a Romeo and Juliet chocolate bar, which incorporates those flavors, right? And so this is a place where, how would I take a high drama filling like a pecan pie filling? How would I do a pecan pie filling inside a chocolate bar, some high drama filling? And maybe it's not an enclosed bar. One of the things to consider is that you do not have to do these things as bars. Could be bonbons. right? A multi-layer bonbon. Maybe what you could do is you could take some dessert, an actual dessert, and make chocolate around it. Just cover it in chocolate. So I want to do. We got a comment from James RRO who's watching on YouTube. Speaking of fruit leathers, we've just started testing chocolate-covered fruit leather bits with customers, and it's been going great. Definitely falls into the category of a product people come back to. James, absolutely. I'm thinking particularly this is using a fruit leather bit as an inclusion, for example. This is something that Madre Chocolate, Nat Bletter in Hawaii did with his three cacaos bar. So it was, obviously it was chocolate made from cacao beans, but I believe it was cacao nibs, and he had a fruit leather made from cacao pulp. And so he chopped the fruit leather into small bits, the cacao fruit pulp leather into small bits, and used it as an inclusion, right? So that's a really, really interesting idea is chocolate covered fruit leather bits. And what I would say is think about an exotic fruit that which you can purchase a puree or make a puree. I mean, would it work with, obviously it will work with apple, it will work with pear. If you're in the Northeast of the United States, could you use pawpaw? I think that would be a really, really interesting idea. Not many people know about pawpaw, but it's a very American thing. What are the ways that you can take this idea, right? But I'd be interested in knowing when you're talking about chocolate covered, are you enrobing them or are you panning them? I'm just curious if you'd be interested in sharing them with me. So, okay, so you've done passion fruit, naranjilla. People are naranjilla and soursop fabulous. I mean, these are great, great, great ideas. They're not necessarily flavors that many Americans would know about. So we might not necessarily know here in the United States what a naranjilla is, what soursop are, passion fruit, maracuja. Definitely, 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 definitely. I suppose, James, you're enrobing them right now. That makes an enormous amount of sense. And so this is a fabulous alternative to what the French call aiguillettes, sort of chocolate covered citrus rinds. So instead of doing chocolate covered lemon peel or chocolate covered orange peel or chocolate covered tangerine peel or lemon peel, what you can do is you can make a fruit leather product, slice it up, and then cover it. As a matter of fact, many industrial versions of aiguillettes actually don't use actual peel. What they do is they make a very, very firm jelly, and that's what they cover in chocolate. And it may be that that's a whole lot easier because you don't have to worry about the moisture content of the peel and the fact that the sugar syrup that you're using to candy the citrus peel. You don't have to worry about that and it leaking through the chocolate shell. So by doing something and drying it out by dehydrating it, right? And so having it a low moisture content, great idea, great idea. Um, so this is Mike King at Encore Coffee Co. Coffee and Chocolate in Kansas City. Hey, Mike, hope you're doing well. I don't know how cold it is where you are right now. I was talking to my daughter who's in Pittsburgh, and it is brutally cold, and there's still lots of snow on the ground. So, question: what are your thoughts on market demand interest for drinking chocolate? So, what are my thoughts? Oh, I well, I think it's very, very um, market dependent, and so I'm going to bring up the concept of DMA, which is around a metropolitan area, right? So the DMA around Kansas City, the DMA around New York City metro area. So think about a DMA and think about the weather, number one, and think about what's going on in your area. So that's number one. So, for example, I'm here in Arizona. And so if I'm going to think about a drinking chocolate, I'm going to think about something that speaks to the Southwest. So I might do something which is spiced with chili, right? And specifically a dried hatch chili, which they grow here in Arizona and New Mexico. And we also do smoked jalapenos and chipotles. And so I would think about those kinds of flavors. We do mesquite smoked barbecue here in Arizona, and so I would think about those things tying into the flavors of what we're doing. So again, Kansas City, think about what's going on in Kansas City and make something which, because you are a small maker, right? You can make that nobody else is going to make for your market, right? Now, obviously, if you're going for broader distribution, this is very, very different. The second thing you need to think about format, all right? And obviously, Mike, in your particular case, because you are also a coffee roaster, what you can do is you can roast coffee, you can refine the coffee into the chocolate that you're making, and then what you can do is you can find some way to grade it. Uh, you can find some way to grade it so that people can melt it. And so this is where the form factor of what you're making. Is it going to be a powdered product, which you're taking the ingredients and mixing them in? So you can take cocoa powder and sugar and perhaps milk powder and put them together in a powder form. Are you taking a chocolate bar and are you grinding up into small bits so people can melt it? Now, if I were doing this at a retail experience, Mike, so if I had the ability to, if I had a shop and people were coming in, I would do a high drama product, high drama chocolate product, drinking chocolate product, which is around the notion of a ganache, which could be, so I'd get a little ramekin of ganache, and then I'd have a little pitcher of hot milk, whether it was dairy milk or an alt milk. And what I would do is I would enable people to take as much of the ganache as they wanted to, put it in the bottom of their mug, and then pour the hot milk in and make whatever it is that they wanted in terms of intensity. But then they could eat the ganache that they didn't put in the chocolate. They could eat something. So I would think about how it's being consumed and where it's being consumed as a part of doing it. But you don't necessarily need to. So while having a craft chocolate replacement for Swiss Miss, I think is a really good idea. And what you might want to do is you might want to go look at a brand called Sip Extraordinary, which disclosure is a brand which is owned by a colleague of mine, En-Ming Xu, who I've known for 20 years and is a friend and supporter of the chocolate life. Thank you very much, En-Ming. So if you want a good example of what it can be, you might want to go buy a bag. This is a powdered product, but think about exactly what you're doing and where you are and what you're doing. And, hey, Mike, you said, yeah, cheesy corn drinking chocolate. And the answer to the question is, why not? Right? Why not? Right? You're in Kansas City. Cheesy corn is a thing, right? Could I make a cheesy corn drinking chocolate? Now, why I'm saying this is that in Colombia, when you have a drinking chocolate, especially for breakfast, it will have cheese and the melted cheese in it. So there is historical precedent for doing this. So you wouldn't want to have something which is cheesy as macaroni and cheese. You want to choose the right cheese to doing this, maybe a Taleggio or something like that. But it can be done, right? And it's not as crazy as you think. And why not? If you think about Chocolato de David, so David Brinks, I think his name is, in Portland, every year he puts together a batch of pig's blood ganache chocolates, and not everybody only makes a couple of kilos of them, but it always attracts press attention. And so you could do, so think about this. Could I do a chocolate which had a cheese base in it, not necessarily yellow cheese, but something like a freeze-dried mozzarella that you refined into the chocolate, but then the corn was freeze-dried corn that was an inclusion and it might float to the top. Okay, so there's a way to think about doing it, and you might go there and try that. And then also with James, fits with Colombian style hot chocolate. Absolutely, that's the way of thinking of it. You may not have a big Colombian immigrant community in and around Kansas City, but what I'm saying is that the flavor profile is something that does exist. You're not making it up, right? So that was a diversion, but Um, um, it's not a trendy trending, but um, if you're in Southern California, maybe doing a hot chocolate might not be the greatest thing. If you're in some place where you regularly get around freezing in the winter and you do it for an extended period of time, and people are gonna want a hot chocolate beverage, that'd be very, very cool. Pun intended, thing to consider. Um, and make it local. Make it something that responds to local trends. And if you had a powdered, a cocoa powder and sugar and milk product which had like cheese powder in it, right? It all mixed together, and then you had um, freeze dried corn in the mix. So it could be pretty cool. That'd be pretty cool to think about it. But let's get back, right? High drama fillings. So think about from cake to bar, short video showing the original dessert and how you rethink it in chocolate. Okay, right? Comparative tastings in your shop or as online kits. Use them to educate about fat systems. So how do fat and water chemistry work together, and how in chocolate it's different from the experience you have in a bar or in the original dessert. And again, the Romeo and Juliet bar, right? If you're not familiar with it, that our Mission Chocolate does, is a great example of that. It's a fabulous bar. I've been in Brazil a couple of times, and when I'm staying in a hotel and they have a breakfast in the hotel and there's Romeo and Juliet on the buffet, I always pick it up to get an idea. So it may be guava paste and a local cheese. I think that's what it is. It's guava paste. Um, I, I believe. So finally, plant-based and milk chocolate. So the important thing here, if you're gonna think about plant-based, don't do vegan for vegan's sake. Build a style, a house style around vegan. So pick more than one plant milk. There's no reason why it has to be 100% oat milk, right? Oat milk generally tends to have a specific flavor, and oat milk has no fat in it, making it difficult to work with. You have to add a lot more cocoa butter to get to a real mouthfeel. It has a definite texture, and oat milk has a flavor. But you could do an oat milk and coconut milk blend, or an oat milk and almond milk. So obviously this is dried oat milk and almond milk blend. Don't necessarily think that, oh, I can only use one milk, right? So why not use a combination of macadamia nut milk and cashew nut milk, right? You could think about that and use that as your house style. And what you could do is you could say, I'm going to use this blend for beans that are roasted this way, which have this flavoring in it, and this blend so use that. This is your house style. So think about doing that. And then focus from a content angle. We built this bar to taste like X origin in full voice. It just happens to be a plant-based bar. So when it comes to chocolate, chocolate naturally is plant-based. The only time when chocolate is not plant-based is when you're using an ingredient that might be synthesized, like a synthetic emulsifier, a cocoa butter replacement, for example. That's the only time, unless you're making a dairy milk bar, right? So when you go ahead, think about using different milks for different purposes, and then you can steer the flavor profile around the roast of the beans, the origin of the beans, other flavorings that might be in the bar, and that could be your house style. And it may sound strange, but if anybody's ever taken one of my classes, one of the things that I always say is blending is your friend, right? And things don't necessarily need to be single origin or single source. You can blend and take advantage of blending. You might have a really expensive nut milk powder, right? That would be too expensive if it was 100% that nut milk powder. So you don't necessarily so you can replace some of it in a blend with a less expensive milk powder. So think about that. Deep dive. So from a content angle, taste first narrative, deep dives, how oat versus almond versus hazelnut milk changes the viscosity of the chocolate, how it changes the mouthfeel, how you get there. Explain to people how you do what it is that you're doing, whether it's a reel for TikTok or Instagram, or whether it is a still image with an explanatory note, something to consider about that. So for every single one of these trends, there's a product angle and a content angle. And again, I'm going to put my notes into here afterwards. And I didn't want to give everything away for today's episode in terms of what the book, but if you are a member of the Chocolate Life and you're a premium member of the Chocolate Life, at the annual member, which is $42 a year or above, right, you're going to receive a copy of this book at no charge on the 15th of February. So as a thank you for being a member, as a benefit. So health angled chocolate. So this is where you take an existing recipe, especially if you are a maker who works from the beans. So you can talk about how the flavanols, how the theobromine acts as an anti-aging and the healthy component. You're focusing in on the science aspects of what it is that goes on. So what you want to do is you want to create from a product angle, create a clearly labeled, research-informed dark microline, which means 3 or fewer. Again, you want 80% of your profits and revenues coming from 20% of your products, right? So what this means, if you are a from the bean chocolate maker, right, you may want to consider blends using less expensive beans in some of them, rather than 100% of your product line being single origin chocolates, which are exotic, especially if you lean toward the 2-ingredient line. Those are going to be the most expensive products that you can make. High cocoa, expensive beans, right? So you can still do a high flavanol, right, chocolate bar, but it doesn't have to be a single origin bar, right? So think about that. So emphasize percentage, processing choices, and portion guidance, right? Don't promise miracles, right? That's not what you're going to want to do. But just say, hey, here's what the science says. And if you want to, you can use this chocolate as a part of a health regimen, an anti-aging regimen moving forward. Then the next one, better for the planet, traceable, ethical cocoa. Make proof a part of the product itself. So don't just put if you've got a fair trade certified label, Rainforest Alliance, FLO Fair Trade, just don't put the logo up there. Make the case for what it is that you're doing and why it is better. Even if you don't have one of those logos because you're sourcing more directly, you're not outsourcing your responsibility for these claims. You're working with farmers directly or more directly. You know who they are, what they're doing, what their ethics are, what their farms are like. What you can do is you can focus on that, right? And then from a product angle, which leads into a content angle, consider a recurring impact edition. So 1 bar a year, right? Where you just lean into this notion, right, of being able to demonstrate the impact that this bar has at the farm level, right? And then it becomes part of your content angle. So as I've already said, replace generic sustainable copy with specific copy. But when this impact edition, when you think about this impact edition, what's it going to mean, right? In terms of the way you talk about it in social media, the way you talk about it in your marketing materials, the way you might put out a press release for what's going on. Anyway, focus. I mean, we talk about single origin all the time, and single origin is a part of this, but it's really about provenance storytelling. Single origin Colombia doesn't tell me a whole lot, right? But if you can go into depth about the provenance of what you're doing, again, this might be a micro line. If you've got 20 bars, you want 80% of your profit from 20% of your bars. That profit, and what I call cash cows, and I mentioned this, you want to have something, you want to have products that people are going to go, oh, I bought it yesterday and it's gone today. I'm going to go and get another one of these tomorrow, right? You need to have a bunch of those in your product line, right? And be able to support the niche products that you make, right? The niche products that you make are going to have this provenance storytelling component, which is front and center, and it might be the most important thing about the marketing of what you're doing. Curate a tight set of origins, right? So here's where I would say, if I was buying from Venezuela, what I might do is I might say, what is the difference between a bean from Caranero, a bean from Chihuahua, and a bean from Lake Maracaibo? Your origins don't have to be from different countries. They can be different regions within the same country, right? And that's a good way to think about it. And then consider an annual focus program. Okay, one origin gets special formats, right? And so what you might do is that you might have, again, you might focus on, let's say, Ecuador, Madagascar, and Peru, just for fun. What you could do is you could have those 3 bars, but then once a year, what you do is you do 3 Ecuadors, right? So you do 2 additional products, and there are different regions in Ecuador, the one you always do, and do 2 others. I mean, to some extent, this is what Bonat has done in there. They've got 3 bars from Java, Asfarth, Java, Sumatra, and a third one whose name is escaping me at the moment. And they all come from the same quote unquote origin, Indonesia, but they represent 3 different expressions of cocoa from the same place. Think about that. Provenance storytelling is important. A narrative series, how this origin tastes because of where it comes from, right? And then transparent, nerdy breakdowns, right, of the product model. Uh, so people can understand what it is that you're talking about. Sugar-free, reduced sugar indulgence, right? Treat sugar as a design problem, not as an afterthought, right? And start with one reduced sugar product that actually tastes better because of the profile, not despite of, right? And it doesn't have to be a chocolate-only bar, right? So think about other flavors, right? Other ingredients that can modulate the flavor of the sweetener. And this is another place where blending can be really, really valuable. You're not really, I mean, I remember working for a client, and this is like 2015, who was having a problem with a bar which had a lot of adaptogenic herbs in it, which were quite bitter. And the question, in order to be able to get the level of sweetness that we wanted, we couldn't do it with alternative sugars, couldn't do it with just coconut sugar. And so we were looking at using sugar alcohol. So xylitol or erythritol, I believe, is what they were using. But the erythritol had a weird flavor. All right. And so we were looking at some blend of coconut sugar and erythritol. Stevia was in the mix. But what we ended up doing was having to add a flavoring to it, a natural flavoring to it. And that natural flavoring just tamed down all the unnaturalness of the non-naturals, the erythritol and the stevia that was in there. So if you're going to do sugar-free, you don't need to use the same sugar, right? You can use a blend of sugars which give different levels of sweetness and get different levels of aftertaste. You may not like the negative heat of solution, the cooling impact that some have. All right. So explain the choices, exchange glycemic considerations, and then think about the difference between glycemic index and glycemic load. It's really, really important. We'll talk about that in the future episode, and position these specific use cases: weekday nibbling, late night bar that won't wreck your sleep, rather than just talking about vague health. So really, really think about, I just need a sugar-free bar, but think very, very carefully about the formulation, the choices of sugar that you're making, and the claims that you're going to be making about what's going on. And again, do it with intent, right? Sweet and salty, texture matchups. I've extended this. It's not just sweet and salty, but it's sweet and tangy and sweet and spicy. So swalty, swangy, and spicy. So use inclusions and salt, develop a controlled vocabulary. Now keep in mind that you can do a small texture series, anchor at least one SKU in a familiar comfort combo, right? So pretzel, potato chip, something like that, right? But elevate it with your chocolate and your sourcing narratives. So this is the product angle, and then there's a content angle that you can use to talk about it with. Then we have, this is the one trend that I want everybody to consider carefully, because I don't necessarily, I know for a fact that a small chocolate maker might be tempted, a small chocolate maker or confectioner might be tempted to use one of these cocoa alternatives, assuming you can get your hands on it, because all of the supply might be bought by industrial makers. But the whole idea of what you're doing, craft and specialty chocolate, is the antithesis of whatever alt.cocoa and alt.chocolate are. And so what I would suggest, and this is something that I will do in a future episode and a future ebook that's a part of the series, is how to push back against this notion, right? And while I'm here, just sort of comments. Number one, we've got this, taking advantage of trends. But for example, would it make sense to have a book that talks about heavy metals, which, like an ebook, which is directly on the topic of heavy metals, that distills whatever it is that we know, so that you can have a guidebook that you can talk to your customers about. I mean, alternative sweeteners, this whole notion of alternative chocolate. Are these concepts for ebooks that you think are interesting? And if they are, you can go let me know in the comments here, or after the fact. Just put it in the comments. I read all of them. I respond to them, even if it's just with a like. I do that. So please let me know if what you might like to see ebooks on in the future. All right. So cocoa scarcity, cocoa-free chocolate, and alternatives. Number one, cocoa-free chocolate is an oxymoron. It is a contradiction in terms. If it doesn't have cocoa in it, it's not chocolate. So we need to be very, very careful. Right. If there is a product angle, there's a content angle. If this is something that you want to pursue, my recommendation, right, as somebody who's been doing what it is that I'm doing as a craft chocolate maker, as a specialty chocolate maker, this is something that you want to avoid at all costs. And so these are the co-optation strategies around the trends that were talked about in the previous chapter in that trend. Now, I'm also developing a roadmap. So a roadmap and tips, things you might want to do if you're going to implement any of these things in calendar 26. And then there's going to be a list of sources. So these are articles which I used in the research to put this together. So I just wanted to let you know about all of those things. And we're at the end of today's episode. We're run a little long. I want to thank James. I want to thank Mike for their questions and comments today. I want to thank everybody who's been here. I'm going to take a quick look to see if, by any chance, the Chocolate Life up, right? The data center is down. The site is still unreachable. I can't go there. So I will close as I close episodes with this episode of Pod Safe Chocolate. Like every episode is sponsored by the members of the Chocolate Life. Please visit the chocolatelife.com and click on the join button, which is in the top navigation. Since 2008, there has always been a free tier, and you can join for free. And what that means is that you'll have access to members-only content and a monthly member newsletter, as well as the ability to join my monthly all-member AMA call. Right? If you subscribe at an annual level to the Chocolate Life, then at any level, you're going to get a copy of the ebook, which I did an overview today. It's going to be out in about 2 weeks, and it will be an extended version of what I showed today. Right? If you get above the member level at $42 a year and you get to one of the higher levels, Leader, Champion, or Guru, these, in addition to being receiving every single one of these ebooks, again, released monthly for the next year, you receive consulting or coaching hours, anywhere from 1 to 3 hours per year as a benefit of your membership. So that membership supports everything that I do with the Chocolate Life. It also supports everything I do here at Pod Save Chocolate. And that's it for the last Friday in January 2026. I'm going to, again, thank everybody who's watched me today. Like, subscribe, do all the things, please, to help grow this, improve its visibility in the YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook algorithms, and to remind everybody that if you're working with chocolate and you're not having fun, you may be doing it wrong. Until the next time, everyone, ciao.